Good morning. I hope you had a good night's rest or something. There are a couple of things that I want to emphasize, go a little bit deeper maybe from last night's talk. Probably the most striking teaching of the Buddha is about not self or non-self. Pointing out that if there is something that is based on conditions and is changing, that can't possibly be a self. So he was very clear that our body is not our self, or our feelings, our thoughts, and any other mental activity. All of it comes and goes, and it's based on conditioning and other conditions. So this is such a powerful and important truth to take in, to realize for ourselves. And we can get it intellectually after we ponder it some, and that's an important part of the process. So that we really reflect on it and we take it in. And it causes us to relate to our bodies and our feelings and our thoughts differently than when we took them to be me and feel identified with them and maybe feel good or bad. But you know, it's a whole different thing when we recognize that these are processes that we have at our disposal during this lifetime, and we can use for good. And we can be happy and not oppressed and constrained by these processes of body and feelings and thoughts. So that's one part that I think it's a huge thing to realize that is not who we are. That's the first fetter. The Buddha talked about 10 fetters that keep us from being awakened and free and happy. And that's the first one, and it's a huge obstacle to our well-being and happiness. So this is very important to really take in and to work with in our practice. And the way to work with it, this is the second point I want to really emphasize, is that, as I said, the Buddha encouraged us to take in the teachings and ponder them in a way that we intellectually get that, what he's trying to convey. And we, listen to Dhamma talks and maybe memorize some things from the Buddhist teachings and really let that settle in deep. But then there's a part of the process that is not about thinking. And to really start to understand the difference between the mental trying to figure it out kind of thinking and opening up to the deeper reaches of our consciousness where the wisdom of the Dhamma comes up, can appear, can arise, and insight into what we never knew before can come out, can be known directly by each of us. So I want to encourage you as you practice today and forever to see that distinction and how we can tune into that deeper wisdom. It goes beyond the thinking mind. And that the thoughts and the emotions and the body and any of the rest of this package of body and mind that we're operating through in this conventional reality is a responsibility that we have. But it's not ourselves. And as we let go of that false identification, and we allow ourselves to really relax. It sounds funny, but right effort is a lot about letting go. That's really relaxing into a space of peacefulness. And, I know that there are so many challenges because our minds don't want to stop. They're caught up in life and the world, and our feelings arise, and we can't, we just have to, work with them as they come. But we can work with them as they come and not let them be an obstacle to our living in a way that we are at ease with whatever arises. This is really the result of the practice. We can't stop the whole plethora of things that happen to a human being or can happen to a human being. It's possible that any of that can happen to you. But we can learn and practice being with that and knowing that's not the end of the story. If there is an end of the story, it's when we see the way things truly are and we are at total ease and peace and happiness within that, in the present moment. It's not some faraway goal that we have to work towards for decades. It's about shifting our perception, our way of thinking, our identification, and seeing it for what it is. So I had a dream last night that I had a goat. And the goat was living in the house I was living in some other room. And I realized that I hadn't been paying any attention to this goat. I hadn't fed it in like 2 days. And I thought, oh dear. So I took the goat out of the room and I opened the door and I let it out, and then I thought, oh, I let it out the front door. I should have let it out the back door where there's a fence. So the goat is off. And I better go find the goat. Fortunately, the goat wasn't that far away. It was ravenously eating some vegetation. So I gently, I realized at that point I should have had some kind of rope or leash. I went back and got that. And then took care of the goat, letting it eat and taking it back to the safety of the yard. And I thought, well, this is not an auspicious dream. But it could serve as a simile. Like if the goat is our body, if the goat is our emotions, if the goat is our thoughts, then sometimes we're not paying attention to the body or the thinking mind or what we're feeling. And it gets hungry or something, maybe a little wild, and taking care of it is our duty, really. And then, the goat going out the front door and going wherever, that's kind of like also what we might let our mind do, or our emotions might, express all over the place, like a volcano or whatever. Too many similes, I don't know. And then, so we can see that, if we bring the goat into the yard where it's safe, where we can observe it, and we can give it what it needs and care for it, that's kind of what I think the Buddha is suggesting with mindfulness and being present with our experience in a way that we're not identified. You're not the goat, I'm not the goat, but I can observe it and look after it. So I hope that drops a couple of ideas in for how you can practice. And there are many methods for this. We know quite a bit about how to take care of our bodies because that's all over our culture. And we know quite a bit about how to take care of our emotions too, but we have to find the methods that really work for us, each of us. One of the things I often recommend, any of you who know me, you've heard this before, there's a book called Feeding Your Demons. Some of you might have heard of Lama Tsotrama Leone. She was a Tibetan nun a long time ago, and she has a center in Colorado and teaches this process called Feeding Your Demons. And she's taught here at Spirit Rock. I've been here at a couple of day-long retreats that she's given, and one time I told her that the way I use the process that she's describing, which is rooted in an ancient Tibetan tradition, and it's this whole idea of turning towards your feelings rather than trying to suppress them. Don't just lock the goat up in your basement, or letting them run out into the wide, wide world, but being present and turning towards what you're feeling. And being able to stay with it until it really unravels or reveals what it is that it really needs, and then you provide that. So it's a process for that includes some visualization, and I have found it to be quite wonderful. But when I started using it on a regular basis to work with what I was processing, I realized that it really, to me, was the first three noble truths that the Buddha gave. It's turning towards the dukkha, the discomfort, the suffering, and understanding it, and then looking at really seeing the cause of it, the root, some kind of identification or clinging, and then to really give it the attention it needs and see the cessation of that dukkha happening. It's experiencing that. And I said to Lama Tsotrama that I really see this as an actualization of the first three noble truths. And she said, "Oh yeah, you think like that because you're a Theravadan nun." I'm like, yeah, that's right. But what a great gift to be able to have methods like that. Another one that comes out of the world of psychology is a very old book. Some of you are old enough to remember from the 70s, called Focusing by Eugene Gendlin. I see a head or two nodding. Yeah. And it's the same idea. It's how do we turn inwards and be present in an open way without trying to figure it out with our thinking processes. Because that always is a little not quite right, but the tendency with our thinking mind is it stays within the realm of what you have available to think about. But when we open to our intuition, what can come in is something much deeper and bigger, things we didn't know before. And focusing is like that. And the way they started with that, these were students of Carl Rogers back at, I think, the University of Chicago back in the day, and they were trying to figure out, why does therapy work for some people quite well, and for other people it just doesn't? And granted, they didn't have all of the range of methods that we have now available in the realm of psychology, but they started videoing meetings with people, even their first and second time with a therapist, and they saw things that they could predict who was going to have success in therapy from like seeing them in the first session. Graduate students could be watching the video and go, okay, they're going to have success, and sure enough, and what people were doing was turning inwards, like ask a question, and then you turn inwards and go blank here and just let the answer come up from inside. That's really what we're talking about when we talk about contemplation or we talk about reflection. If you ask a question, who am I, or some other question, like about the things you've accepted as your beliefs, even though you don't have a direct experience of it, why do I believe this? Why am I so committed to, being on time? Or why am I so committed to, not breaking something? Or what is it that you do in your life? And then investigating, why do I worry about what someone thinks of me? Or whatever the question is, letting the response come from inside. And so it's interesting how, and these ideas or these the things we take on faith, like the beliefs that we were given as we were children growing up, the things we were taught, all of those things can be examined, reflected upon. And maybe you find that this thing you've held as a belief is really reality. Maybe you find that, well, no, not really. If we take something purely on faith without direct experience of it, there's always some element of doubt underneath. But if you look at any religion and these methods in psychology or philosophy, trying to understand the true nature of reality, they all point in the same direction, to really try to describe the way things are. And at some point, there are no words that are sufficient. But the sense of it, the feeling of it, the experience of it is real and available to us all. So I want to encourage you to investigate. Keep your goat in the backyard.